Aloha, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Faith and Family First. I'm your host, Eva Andrade, and I'm here today with Denise Burke from Alliance Defending Freedom and a special co host, Marcus Oshiro. I know some of you will recognize his name because we're going to ask the question: should the state not be allowed to deny or interfere with an individual's reproductive freedom in their most intimate decisions? So let's chat about that. Welcome to the show, Denise.
Thank you so much for having me.
So just as for full transparency, I want everybody to know that I freaked out when I saw the bill. So I immediately reached out to the Alliance Defending Freedom, as I normally do with bills that have this kind of content. And you were the attorney that rose to the occasion, and you are helping us not only monitor the bill, but kind of look at it through the eyes of a legal eagle, since I am not an attorney, and Alliance Defending Freedom's been around a long time. So let's, before we launch into the bill, which is problematic in itself, why don't you introduce yourself and let people know a little bit about your background?
I'm Denise Burke. I'm Senior Counsel with Alliance Defending Freedom, and I work in our Center for Public Policy. And what we primarily do is work in the state and federal legislature, trying to protect the family, to protect life, and to ensure that the doors are kept open for the gospel. I have been working in the pro-life arena for 25 years. So I've gotten to see a lot of changes and a lot of good and concerning things happening within the movement over those 25 years.
Thank you for all that you do. I mean, it's hard work, and it's not always a job that people are appreciative of, right?
No, but I like to remember that God doesn't always call us to be successful. He calls us to be faithful. So I try to be faithful every single day in the work that I do.
Amen. Amen. And what we'll do real quick too, so that as you hear this other male voice coming, that for those of you that may not know who he is, Marcus Oshiro, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay. Well, Denise, I'm a former legislator. I've served in the State House for 23 years. And in 2017, God plucked me out and gave me a new job. He appointed me to be the chairperson of the Hawaii Labor Relations Board. For the past 7 years, I served as an administrative law judge, adjudicating labor disputes, public sector primarily, and acting as an appellate board with the HIOSH, Occupational Safety Health, citations and discrimination, retaliation, whistleblower types of cases. So I just recently retired, October 31st, my first day of retirement, November 1. It's also the same day that I hung up my bar license, so I'm now inactive and I'm not practicing law, nor do I provide or give any legal advice.
Thank you for that clarification. We have to make sure that as you're saying anything today,
That's
that people
correct.
are not saying right what they're saying. Denise, on the other hand, is licensed to practice. Although, to be clear, you're not licensed to practice here in the state of Hawaii.
I am not, but I've had the honor and pleasure of spending a few trips to Hawaii.
All right. Well, we're hoping that you'll be able to come back in person. Definitely.
Yeah, and I'll take her surfing.
Oh, okay. Marcus will take you surfing.
We got it, Denise.
I'll take you up on that.
Okay.
Okay, so let's launch into this bill. The bill we're referring to is Senate Bill 297, and this is one of many constitutional amendment bills that this legislature has put forth. And I've been doing this job for over 20 years. And I have not seen this many constitutional amendment questions come up in one session, and ones that are moving. So here's what's really interesting about this, Denise. So we here in Hawaii, when a constitutional amendment is on the ballot and people are voting, blank votes up until now have been counted as a no vote. So if people don't understand the question and they leave it blank, the no's plus the blank votes kind of keep a lot of bad things from passing, because we do think that that is fair, that if somebody doesn't understand the question, they leave it blank. They are changing that this year with a constitutional amendment question that is now going to remove that from our Constitution so that a yes is a yes and a no is a no, and it'll be an outright winner take all.
I'm going to have to work on that one.
Yeah. So keep that in mind as we're discussing this today, that should this bill end up on the ballot, that we may not have an as easy road on the educational front as we do. So Denise, let's turn this over to you. You saw the bill, you saw how it's written, you've seen the language. I know you have concerns, so share them with us.
Well, when you look at this language, the thing that struck me first was that it purports to protect reproductive freedom, but it doesn't define what they mean by reproductive freedom. And we have seen this in some other states as they have proposed constitutional amendments dealing with abortion and similar areas. So it's important to realize that this amendment could enshrine not only rights to abortion and contraception, but also a limitless array of reproductive rights, such as sterilization, assisted reproduction, surrogacy, that it endangers parental rights, it threatens the freedom of conscience of Hawaii's healthcare professionals, and it could be used to force Hawaii's taxpayers to pay for abortions and other reproductive care that violate their deeply held beliefs. So this bill is deceptive and concerning.
And I think the other thing that struck me, and help our listeners and viewers understand this, that in a constitutional amendment, there's no age in there, right? So could an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old now say that they have a constitutional right to these things?
Not only that, it says, basically a person. So you're talking about minors, you're talking about males and females, you're potentially talking about people who are citizens of Hawaii and people that are not. So imagine trying to create a constitutional right for non-citizens of Hawaii to come to Hawaii and potentially get taxpayer-funded abortions and other quote-unquote reproductive health care.
Your hawk eyes too, you also notice that it's very interesting. So for those that want to look up the bill, it's only a few pages, and it's interesting because they tell you how the Constitution is going to be amended, right? And so Denise picked this up right away, that it says the state shall not deny or interfere with an individual's reproductive freedom in their most intimate decisions, including, and it gives 3 points, the right to choose to obtain an abortion of a non-viable fetus. Number 2, an abortion that is necessary to protect the life or health of the parent. And 3, the right to choose to obtain or use contraceptives, right? So that seems somewhat simple. But the question that is going to be on the ballot only has point 1 and 2 missing the protect the life or health of the mother. And you picked that up right away. So if nobody caught this and we passed this as it's written, the question that was asked would not match what change would be made to the Constitution, correct?
Correct. And that's obviously very concerning because the voters in Hawaii deserve to know what they're being asked to do to their most foundational document, their Constitution. And here, protecting abortion that's necessary to protect the life or health of the patient has historically meant that you're going to be protecting abortion up until birth for any reason and in any circumstance.
That is so scary. Marcus, I know as an ex-legislator, you're sitting here and you're looking at this. What are your thoughts? Because I know you're not happy about this.
Well, my initial thoughts was, what's the rush? What's the purpose? What's the need of having this legislation? Do we need to have something like this? Hawaii was one of the first in the nation, and back in 1970 to approve abortion up to the first trimester, and it still remains the law of the land. So I don't think there's any threat for anyone living in Hawaii today to access abortion services, with some limitations imposed by law. So I don't see this need for a constitutional amendment to come forward. My understanding, Eve, and
Denise,
is that there are some people out there who are running through this parade of horrors that, given the current administration in Washington, D.C., and the current Congress and current U.S. Senate, that proposals like this may come down from the federal level to impose some kind of limitations upon states' rights. But I don't think that is anywhere on the horizon. I don't think anyone is thinking upon that. So I don't understand the need for this amendment. And again, I agree with you. I think some of the terms like reproductive freedom, the fact of it describes an individual's rights. It doesn't talk about any kind of age limitation. So it could be an end around upon any kind of parental consent or parental involvement in a child's decision. And again, there is no limitation of when and where this services could be rendered. And again, I agree. I think that could supersede the current limitations, restrictions, and freedoms that medical professionals have today in saying no. It may supersede the rights of clinics and hospitals and doctors to say no with threat of losing their license. So very problematic, but I don't think,
That's a good point, Marcus.
Yeah.
And maybe between the two of you, Marcus, especially since you have deep knowledge of Hawaii law, and Denise, you've seen this nationally. So when people start to believe that they have a right to opt out of things because of their religious beliefs, right? I mean, we hear that all the time. Well, even if they pass this, I have a constitutional right to refuse this. I think you need to help people understand that it's not that simple.
Yeah, the concern I have, let me just really quickly on that, 'cause I was just looking at the statute last night, is that statutory code language, this is a constitutional provision that has been enshrined in our founding document. This is the Hawaii State Constitution. That trumps the statutory language any day. So that's problematic for me, looking at the language as it sets forth.
And you're talking about the right to privacy that we enshrined in our Constitution, correct?
Yeah, so it's already there. This can only create mischief. This can only create untold problems and uncertainty. And it could backfire upon the proponents of this because it could just throw this whole area into a mess of litigation because there's uncertainty and the language itself will be challenged. Believe me, this language will be challenged.
Well, that's good. What are you seeing nationally, Denise?
Well, what we're seeing nationally, and now we have 10 states that have enacted protections for abortion into their constitution. So what we're beginning to see, as most of these amendments were adopted in the last couple of years, is that in states who have any sort of protections on the books for abortion, such as limiting abortion before viability or requiring certain regulations and standards to be met to perform an abortion. We are seeing those laws challenged based on the enactment of this amendment. Mm-hmm. And it not only endangers existing laws, but it endangers the right of the people of Hawaii through their legislators to react to the changing science in this area, to the changing evidence that we have of abortion's harms to women. And remember, I said at the top that this could be viewed very expansively to deal with assisted reproductive technology and other areas that the state of Hawaii and the citizens of Hawaii have an interest in regulating and making sure that they may remain safe and adequately subject to oversight.
Yeah.
And this amendment could definitely interfere with that.
Yeah, when I read it, and I even put this in the testimony I submitted, right, is that if this passes, it will stop all future chances to do any kind of pro-life legislation. They will cut our hands off. We will never again try to do things. It wouldn't be impossible because we'd have to change the Constitution. But my point is that Hawaii already has an A+ scorecard from Planned Parenthood, right? We already provide all these things, but to create something, a constitutional right like this, means that we can't ever do a law now on parental consent or even parental notification, right? I mean, we're really stuck. So all of these things that we've been trying to do to maybe push back some of this stuff over the years, our hands are now tied. I mean, am I reading that correct?
No, I agree. I think that term that's not defined in this constitutional proposal, reproductive freedom, it's so vague, it's so broad. I don't know what that means or what that entails. I don't know how you would construe that and apply that. It's unworkable. Again, it goes back to this whole notion for the citizens of Hawaii today, like it or not, good or bad, the law is the law of the land here. And there's no limitation upon a person's access to abortion services. In fact, I think the Planned Parenthood organization lists Hawaii as one of the top states where you can still obtain abortion. My concern right now is that we're going to start seeing more and more people coming in for their very services. One of the testimonies that I saw in the committee hearing the other day was that there was concern about inadequate abortion services on the neighbor islands. I think it was primarily on the neighbor island of Maui and maybe on Kauai. And so they're also looking to maybe increase services on those islands.
But
that's but that, again, that's no need to change
that's an access question. That has nothing to do with
no need to
constitutional
change
rights.
the Constitution.
That's their job to go find doctors that want to do it, right?
And find doctors. Yeah, exactly.
Right. But Denise, the other thing that I think would be helpful for you to explain too is, and you touched on this a little bit, is this idea of viability. Because here in Hawaii, right, it's been 24, 25 weeks, but this kind of language will strike that down, right? So somebody could have an abortion all the way up to their 9th month. Am I reading that correct?
Correct, because you got to remember the amendment purports in the first section to provide a right to abortion up to viability, but then it adds in that second part that's missing. We talked about earlier, that's missing from what's going to be on the ballot, that says you also can have abortions necessary to protect the life or health of the parent. And what we saw under the Roe regime, we will see again under this regime, in which that language, abortion that is necessary to protect the life or health of the parent, will create a massive loophole that will lead to abortion on demand at any time for any reason. Because the amendment doesn't provide any guardrails or clear medical standards for when an abortion is necessary. So that's going to be left to the judgment of the financially interested abortionist. And we know that health under the Roe regime was defined so broadly that it included any sort of physical, emotional, psychological, familial conditions, even the woman's age. So a far-reaching health exception could be used to justify virtually any abortion. So any attempts to argue that this amendment is only dealing with pre-viability abortions is false.
See, and this is what I really want the message to be given today, is anyone watching or listening, right? Is that we fight this now, or we fight it as a constitutional amendment, or we're going to be fighting it for the rest of our born lives, right? Because it seems to me it'd be easier to kill a constitutional amendment now, right, than to fight something that gets passed and becomes part of our Constitution.
And I'm going to say amen to that, because as a former legislator with 23 years of experience in all types of positions in the State House, including leadership positions, if you can go and dispose of this constitutional amendment in the legislature, you're dealing with 76 individuals there. That's a lot easier to do in the next several months than to take this on in a general election where there's other issues going on and there's going to be tons of money coming in from the mainland offshore to influence the voters of Hawaii. So this is the time to dispose of this measure during this session.
All right, Denise, before we let you go, I want to give you one more opportunity. If there's anything you think that we haven't touched on, especially in regards to this amendment, please share it now.
I just want, all voters in Hawaii to understand that this will impact them in a variety of ways. If they are parents, their parental rights are going to be undercut, because not only abortion, but other medical services could be made available to their children without their knowledge and consent. Taxpayers need to understand that their tax dollars are going to be used to pay for these services, not only for Hawaii residents, but potentially for other people coming into Hawaii to access these services. And when you have the healthcare professionals' freedom of conscience threatened, it threatens all of our access to good quality healthcare. So the implications of this amendment are very far-reaching, and everyone should understand that it impacts them directly.
Now, if people have questions for you, or even if they have a case they're worried about, maybe their religious freedoms being attacked here in Hawaii, give them where they can go for more information.
They can learn more about our work at Alliance Defending Freedom and in appropriate circumstances request legal help by going to our website, adflegal.org.
Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today, Denise. We really appreciate it. And I'm sure you're on my speed dial now. So as we start moving forward, we may have you come back, especially if they start tweaking the language, which I'm assuming that that's probably what they're going to do moving forward.
I would be happy to.
Well, we sure appreciate that Denise took some time out of her day to go over that first constitutional amendment question, Marcus, but that's not the only crazy constitutional amendment question that's out there. I mean, we have another bill that we'd like to talk about in these next few minutes.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's another bill, Senate Bill, what is that, 350?
350. Now, this one, it's kind of along the same vein, but it's crazy. And I still think it's pretty bad crazy, just like the other one was. But this one seems more innocuous because this is entitled Proposing an Amendment to the Hawaii Constitution to Protect the Right to Contraception. So that sounds kind of innocuous, but through your eyes?
Yeah, it sounds innocuous. And I'm kind of amazed that one would propose a constitutional amendment to the fundamental organic document of the state of Hawaii, the state constitution, to enshrine in the constitution a right to contraception. I could understand maybe a right to health care, maybe a right to housing, right to clean water.
Right to eat?
Yeah, clean air, yeah.
How about the right of our farmers to grow natural foods and not be charged $1 million so that we'd rather buy mainland?
Yeah. So healthy farm practices, regenerative farming, clean food without additives and other banned ingredients.
How about the right to dentistry? You know, because some people need some dental work that the neighbor islands
That's why, I always
get.
thought, some of my friends, would say, maybe a right to medical care. Yeah, well, yeah, but this is a right to contraception. So I guess it's a subset of medical care narrowing down to contraception.
Okay, so now why? So when you're looking at the language of this one, what is the question that will be asked of people? How is it worded for the ballot?
I think the language, if I'm reading it correctly, it says contraception. No law shall be enacted nor any state action taken that denies or interferes with a person's right to obtain contraceptives or voluntarily engage in contraception. And then the question to be printed on the ballot reads as follows. Shall the Constitution of the state of Hawaii be amended to provide that no law shall be enacted or any state action taken that denies or interferes with a person's right to obtain contraceptives or voluntarily engage in contraception?
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. I've been in Hawaii my whole life. Is anybody in the state of Hawaii being denied access to contraceptives? And I'm not talking about access. I'm not talking about the fact that there are some doctors that they don't have enough doctors to provide abortions and stuff. I'm talking about, has anyone in your knowledge been denied access to contraception in the state of Hawaii?
My knowledge arises from my experience as a legislator. Some minors were unable to get contraception. When I talk about contraception, I'm talking about, what do you call that? The pill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was prior to SB1 because SB1 actually made sure
Oh,
that
that's
people
right.
understood that 14 and 15-year-olds now
Yeah,
can
yeah.
access all of this health care.
That was 2 years ago, right?
2023.
Wasn't it the first bill that Governor Green
Yeah.
signed into law?
It was so important. Yes, and it was the first Senate bill, right? SB1.
That's right. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
ma-
huge. That also protected abortionists in the state of Hawaii.
That's right.
At the next show. People stick around because on the next show, Marcus and I are going to be talking about that bill, which is Senate Bill 1150, that is going to it's going to expand SB1 law to
yeah.
include gender ID stuff, but they have to come back for the next show to hear that one. But I'm just curious that for this one, though, as far as my understanding is, no one right now, unless you're under 14, is being denied.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone being denied. That has never been brought to the forefront. I haven't read anything about it. It hasn't been coming across the 6 o'clock news lately, or appearing in the Star Advertiser or in Civil Beats. I don't know what the impetus for this provision is. I really can't understand it.
So let me ask you this. What happens if both of these pass? So they pass one that gives you the right to reproductive freedom, and they give you the constitutional right for access to contraceptives. I mean, do we need both? And if we have both, does it create a conflict?
I'm not sure about that. I think it might be complementary. I think it would be interpreted and applied to complement one another, not to oppose one another. I think the idea is you want the laws to be complementary and not in opposition if both were approved. But again, this bill, like the other bills we talked about earlier with Denise, has not really been vetted and reviewed by the Attorney General as far as I can know. When I went to the public record in the legislative hearing, I didn't see any opinion from the Deputy Attorney General or the Attorney General herself on what this bill does and if there's any constitutional defects or deficiencies in the current draft of the bill and or the question that's going to be posed and placed on the ballot.
Well, I tell you what, Senate Bill 1150, the ones we're going to talk about in the next show, which is going to expand the abortion, well, actually reproductive rights chapter, right, in our Hawaii revised statutes. It's going to actually now include the gender ID stuff because right now, before it was only the abortion stuff. So I think that what they're doing is they're throwing all this stuff to see what sticks because they're so worried, as you mentioned, about what the new administration is going to do as far as access to contraception. Because Trump has made comments that he does want to kind of see how that reversal of Roe has affected states. But I thought he made it clear that he was not going to step into any states' rights.
I think he made it clear. I think during the campaign itself, he made it clear that he would leave it up to the states. He would honor the decision of the Supreme Court and let the states decide for themselves. And he wouldn't interfere with that decision, leave it up to the states.
All right. Well, we know we have just a couple of minutes left, and I want to make sure that we do a call to action. So the first thing is there are numerous bills that we are tracking right now this legislative session, and you're only going to get that from hawaiifamilyforum.org. We're the only organization that's tracking all of these different bills and providing it on our website at hawaiifamilyforum.org/take action. Just go to our website because then you'll know what's going on. A lot of groups are weighing in on a lot of these different bills. There's all kinds of calls to action going out. People are posting on their network. So make sure you plug into us because at least we'll give you some talking points and we do research. So make sure you do that. But what would be your call to action on these two bills we talked about today?
I think the time is now to contact your legislator, your senator and your representative, to let them know how you feel about these bills. Be kind, be gentle, be civil, but, definitely petition your government for a redress of grievance. That's your right, and I think that's your responsibility as a citizen of the state of Hawaii to express your opinion on these important matters. This is something that's very new to the public discussion on the arena of ideas. So now is the time to contact your legislator, House and Senate member, and share with him your opinion. It's very important.
Yep. And I want to reiterate a million times what I said. Act now, or you're going to have to act later. This is not one of those situations that you can ignore and it'll go away. You either fight now, which as Marcus mentioned, it's easier to kill now. Well, I wouldn't say it's easier to kill, but it's better to kill it now
Yes.
than to try and fight it if it becomes a constitutional amendment.
Yeah, I think you got to remind these legislators that this is not a need to kind of legislation. There are other more pressing matters facing the citizens of the state of Hawaii. There are cost of living issues. There are going to be huge insurance issues that's going to be coming up. They have to wrestle with. There are going to be issues regarding educational needs, higher educational needs, and of course health needs. And they will have to react to all the changes coming down from the federal government if Mr. Musk has his way with some of these contracts and some of these disbursements that they have in these programs. So there might be some shortages on some state programs and fundings that will probably take precedent over matters like this.
All right. Well, make sure that you take time to like this video, share, subscribe, hit that notification button so you know every single time we upload a new video. And you want to stay plugged in. Make sure you stay tuned for next episode because Marcus and I are going to go over things like gambling and gender ID and marijuana, all of these things that our legislators believe right now is the most important thing to be dealing with in this economy. And people are flying with call to actions and information and all that. But if you want to know how we're viewing some of these bills and why you need to plug in, then make sure you watch the show next week. And we will see all of you next week. Mahalo, everybody.